Welcome boys and girls, Costin here with a discussion about another race in Total War Warhammer 3 that Creative Assembly should take a look at. It's not the highest priority on the list, but I am taking these in order. So of course, we are talking about the Demon Prince, good old Daniel. Not really. There's nothing I need to talk about with Daniel. He is so inherently broken as a legendary lord. The race is broken, the faction is broken, the lord is broken, that in order to make him work, Creative Assembly will literally need to remove him from the game, rebuild him from scratch, change literally everything about his campaign in order to function. The item system doesn't work, the quote-unquote demonic lore/research tree doesn't work, the character customization doesn't work. A generic demon prince that Warriors of Chaos can get, or one of the demon factions can get, is actually better in most situations than Daniel. Daniel is a marketing name. So that's what I mean. Everything about this race, from economy to research to the types of units he can recruit, the types of heroes he can recruit, how he recruits them, how he takes over settlements, how he does demonic glory is broken. I've done a whole video on this. You can check it out. I'll link it at the end of this one, but there's not much more to say. The race to talk about in this video are the Chaos Dwarves. Chaos Dwarves are a strong race. No one can deny that. Their ability to scale up, their economy, their climate situation, their sheer potential in a campaign is extremely high. The problem is, all of that works in the long term of a campaign. And given the fact that one of the core issues of Warhammer 3 is the inverted difficulty curve, and the lack of an endgame, the lack of a dynamic campaign, the lack of major AI empires to challenge you, it just means when you're playing a Chaos Dwarf campaign, you're dealing with a very slow early game that is very limiting, and then once you have built up strength, you are unstoppable. And the core design issue of the Chaos Dwarves is that everything about their race, be it their economy, their unit capacity, their industry, is all built around the idea of growth. But that just means as you play the campaign more and more and more, you already inherently become stronger, but you become ridiculously stronger. It's not a great design for how Warhammer 3 works right now. Take, for instance, one of their key features, the Tower of Tsar. All these lovely conclave seats culminating in the idea that you can eventually confederate major faction. So you can get Tsar Nagrund, you can get the other two legendary lords, so Warhorse of Tsar and Draz of Dashin, in this case as Astrogoth. Now that is a lot of power that you have available through the tower. It gives you significant levels. Even something like the military district, which just immediately destroys a wall when you're besieging it, when you were besieging a settlement, is a level of power many races would want. Warriors of Chaos have it with Shatterstone, of course, and they can choose which wall, but it does create this kind of dynamic. You are powerful, and every system you have is just adding to that power. And that's kind of one of the core issues. We can look at military convoys. Think of military convoys. Military convoys are essentially, they can be useful early on when you're struggling for resources, so it's a way to convert money into, say, raw materials and the like. But later on, they just become like, oh, here's a bit more resources. It ends up feeling rather pointless. Actually, they're more useful for the generation of items than they are in actual generating money or resources. So another factor in that. Their research tree follows the same pattern. Lots of great stuff. Things like Lord Crew rank for convoy masters, things like labor quotas, construction times, armament production, things like research rate conclave influence gained, upkeep to all units. Chaos Dwarves do build strong, but so do other races in the game. That's not their problem. They might go much further than some other races, though not all of them. But it is the early game situation that really hampers them. Because you look at what you can recruit in a Chaos Dwarf, it's only going to be laborers and hobgoblins. And those are not bad early game units, but then comes everything else associated with it. Your Structures require a good amount of time to construct, and they either cost materials or armaments, which means you're either sacrificing money for that, or you end up abusing the game, like raising a settlement, for instance, a provincial capital, and then rebuilding that provincial capital next turn or in the same turn, because you can use conclave influence or just get a provincial capital in the same turn. It's just this really silly and awkward system, or systems that Chaos Dwarves do end up having in their entire campaign. You are literally encouraged to cheese, because all the fun stuff of the Chaos Dwarves, all the things that make them awesome, all their great units are locked behind armaments, they're locked behind high tiers of settlement, and they're locked behind unit caps. So that's another issue. So you have this complex economic system, which is based on what we got in Troy. But the thing in Troy is that in Troy, it worked. You had bronze, you had gold, you had food that you had to balance out. But you could still recruit units. You didn't have, for the most part, unit capacity. Unit capacity was only available to a limited extent for a couple of units. You could have a very good basic army. So the issue when you're looking at unit caps is we really could use more baseline unit caps. We start with 2 warriors, 1 infernal guard, all that, 2 blunderbusses. That is our starting position. If they increased warriors and blunderbusses, etc., that would genuinely give us more choices, or maybe war machines. That would give us a lot more interesting choices to work with. Of course, we'd still have to balance out the economy, the upkeep situation. The hobgoblins are obviously a much cheaper. They're much cheaper to actually recruit and maintain, or some of them are. Like you look at cutthroats versus Chaos Dwarf warriors, regular ones. Maybe Sneaky Gits could use an upkeep reduction. But ultimately, the point is, this is a fun and dynamic race, but all the fun is locked away. And by the time you do unlock it, there's no excitement left in the campaign, because you've gotten to such an overwhelming power level then no one is going to be able to stand in your way. I mean, think of just the Tower of Zar. Like, that's just the first tier, wall breaches and all that. But even in the first tier, we get like, Armor of Contempt as an army ability, Winds of Magic, random item generation, Flame and Shadow at tier 2. So you end up with all of these freaking ridiculous ability. But by the time you're getting this, and Confederations, you are so ridiculously strong that nothing is going to stand in your way. Or we look at Astrogoth. We look at what he does have in his campaign, where he gets +2 hero capacity for all heroes, as well as a +3 hero and Lord Recruit rank. This is not a great design for a campaign. Beyond that, though, speaking about individual Legendary Lords, none of them have unique mechanics to really differentiate themselves. So what you would consider Lorem mechanics are available faction-wide. That does reduce the replayability of campaigns, because every Chaos Dwarf campaign feels the same in that respect. Now, I don't think it's a problem from a geography situation, because if you're playing Chaos Dwarves, you're going to want to care about the Darklands. It doesn't matter if you started halfway around the world. So they avoided what I would call the high elf problem, where you care about Ulthuan, but many of their lords are not there or close to it. But at the same time, the real problem is without unique mechanics, the replayability factor goes down. Drazif is essentially just much better in a campaign because of armaments, although Astrogoth is really good early on. The loser in all of this is Zaytan the Black, because you look at Zaytan's campaign. Instead of starting with a tier 2 settlement, which both Astrogoth and Drazif start with, he starts with tier 1, so that inherently limits his early game, which is one of the chief issues of the Chaos Dwarves. He does have really good long-term potential, but all of them have long-term potential. But beyond that, he also has this situation where he's marching east, but he's got Grimgor in his backside. Ignore Grimgor at your own peril. So he's stuck in a really bad campaign situation to deal with. He does care about the territory to the east. The east is also where his victory conditions are, but at the same time, he can't ignore what's behind him. So that is just a bad campaign dynamic. To be fair, it's generally the design of the terrain over here, just spread out settlements, not really valuable, and then the bastion over there, which is a looming threat. So if you do secure all of this and secure the bastion, you're in an impregnable position. But doing so it's not challenging. Village is not going to stand up to you, but it's more so that level of annoyance. So Chaos Dwarves are awesome in terms of the ideas, the mechanics, the notions that make the race unique, but they have this inherent balancing issue. And the reason I think they have this balancing issue is they weren't really designed in as much of a way for Immortal Empires as they were designed for Realms of Chaos. So slow build up, massive level of power. That was the core of ROC's design. But that doesn't work with Chaos Dwarves. They end up being ridiculous, and both their Immortal Empires and Realms of Chaos campaigns, while you can dominate the world very easily, kind of feels just very grindy after a certain stage. Powerful, well designed, but need fine tuning. And also unique mechanics and a better situation for Zeta. That's all I had to say. Christine signing out. Let me know what you guys think about all of this. What would you like to see for the Chaos Dwarves? What would you like to see better for them? One of the things I would say that we do need better for them is how their AI handles the unit recruitment. The economy aspect is fine for them. The AI doesn't struggle with that, likely because it cheats. Where it does struggle is in the fact that because of the initial unit caps, they're just going to recruit a lot of hobgoblins and laborers, and they're not going to switch to recruiting elite units until they're already lost their initial armies. But by that point, their enemy has gotten a lot of experience, and they likely lose. That's one of the problems for Chaos Dwarves. All I had to say. Stay tuned.